3, 2, 1.
Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine. Let's open up the garage door and welcome everybody into the Racing World podcast. Hi, I'm Darcy Waldegrave. Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land, along with David Turner, immaculately attired as I'd expect, and the grand old man of this podcast.
Oh, no, come on.
Mr. Bob McMurray. You're in the middle. You've got the seat of power.
Not so much of the grand.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, this old guy as well. Thanks very much for joining us as we look into the wonderful wide world of motorsport. We've got a very special guest on the program today, someone I was introduced to by Bob McMurray. It seems like decades ago now, though it wasn't that long. He's an absolute superstar of the Formula One world. Has written, I don't know how many books, guys, about it.
Over 70.
Over 70.
Latest one being the biography of Niki Lauda, which I can really recommend. Honestly,
it's possibly more
fantastic.
books than you've read, David.
Do they have pictures?
Dare I suggest it? So Maurice Hamilton will be joining us on the program as we look back at, well, essentially just over a week of madcap action at Silverstone, because, of course, we had the double header, and that finished off over the weekend with quite the turn-up for the books as far as the result is concerned.
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about it later, but I think the overriding thing is that Max won and Mercedes didn't. Simple as that.
And that goes the end of Racing World show number 8. Have a wonderful afternoon. Oh, it really was, and there was some wonderment, Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well. Really enjoyed the Formula 3 racing over the weekend. I'm sure we can talk to Maurice about that as well.
Those guys get into it, don't they?
Oh, they
Just
do.
So much talent.
So much
Raw.
talent and global talent. That's what gets me about. And, of course, New Zealand right in the thick of it with Liam Lawson having the time of his life. Marcus Armstrong not having so much fun, but that's motorsport for you.
There you go.
And talking about New Zealanders having fun, we'll touch on it later on in the piece. We've also got the supercars, finally, if indeed they do actually get to Darwin. Still unsure at this stage, really. I think the trucks are due to drive through, and they can space everybody out in the street to cheer for them, with Shane Van Gisbergen hitting supercar race number 400.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Over the weekend. It's
amazing. 400.
Really quite extraordinary. Yeah. But let's kick things off with a bit IndyCar news, the ever-changing sands, the shifting sands of the IndyCar world. Mr. Turner, what do you have for us?
Well, by the time this podcast is on air, we're 1 day away from the start of practice for the 104th running of the 500. That's a no-brainer. That's happening.
That's not breaking. We know that's going
that's
on.
Not breaking.
Yeah.
Breaking news probably, but it's slightly a couple of days old now, is the prize pool is halved. So it was a $15 million US prize pool. Roger Penske and Penske Entertainment announced in the weekend that it's now $7.5 million. But I was really impressed. All the teams, Chip Ganassi came out within minutes saying that fully supportive of what Roger's doing. And then this morning, Robin Miller said in his Daily Racer column the fact that without the 500, they'd lose some teams. So everyone's very supportive of what's going on. Most teams have budgeted around the 500. So the 500 is happening. There is 33 cars. I don't think we'll see 34, which is kind of good, really. But there is 33. I think there was a little bit of help to get drag and speed in there, but it's happening. So, it's all on. Practice starts literally tomorrow. And, same...
Tomorrow being this... As we record this,
it
would have happened.
Yes, exactly. But it's mainly a rookie orientation day, and then we're into it. Very hot over there at the moment in Indianapolis, in the 30-degree mark, so it's quite hot. Strangely enough, though, the 10-day forecast, 14-day forecast is not that flash, but, it changes pretty quickly there. So we'll see. But it's definitely happening. And Mid-Ohio will happen somewhere. And later in the show, we hear from Kiwi Paul Ziggy Harkis, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that as well. So there's plenty going on.
And what's happening crowd-wise around Indianapolis? I was speaking with Scott Dixon a few days ago now around that situation. He said how odd it is when you're driving, really, you're not too engaged with the crowd. He says, but Indy, you really are. It's really hard to actually get your head in that space, even when it comes to finding marks in the crowd when you're driving around with the crowd cheering. And when it comes to being just at the track itself, there'd be something missing and something quite bizarre that he can't quite put his finger on around that particular race. But they're pretty keen to get up and going. I also spoke to him around the fact that they've got double points. He was not overly concerned about the double points. He said, look, the series has taken a bit of a haircut. It's lost a few races, might lose a couple more. But in the wider scheme of things, we understand how important IndyCar is. And I said, Scott, you might lose your entire lead just like that. And he goes, well, I've just got to be better, don't I? It's just the way it is. We understand what it is. They didn't drop it on us out of nowhere. This is what it is. We're going to run with it. So not at all concerned about that.
It's amazing you say, well, he says that he's got marks in the crowd. Think of the Indy 500 circuit. You're going down the straight and they're just a blur on the right-hand side. And when you come to the corners, you're looking left. For you to pick somebody out in the crowd, you've got to look right. I'm buggered if I would look right doing 180 mile an hour going left.
Sorry. They're not an individual
Maybe
character,
that's
but it's the background. It's how it looks, and you're so used to having a crowd thick there when you drive in various
Maybe
points.
that's why Scott's a champion and
you're not, yes.
Nowhere near it.
But you are grand.
Interestingly enough, and both the guests that we have in the second part of our show today, Ziggy talks more about some of those scenarios and the double points, and Conor Daly, who I was lucky enough to chat with, we talked specifically about crowd. So, if you're watching, keep watching, because Conor talks, he sums it up the best I think we ever could. It's far better than the three of us, and it's all positive. It's all about we're going racing. So
I think that's the key thing with this. This is the Racing World podcast with David, Bob, and Darcy. And up next, Maurice Hamilton joins the program. Very much looking forward to catching up with your old friend and a relatively new one for myself. Should be some fantastic listening. And it's a very warm welcome to the Racing World podcast to Maurice Hamilton. Maurice, fantastic to have you on board. Thanks so much for joining us here at Racing World and to celebrate what was an extraordinary week and a couple of weeks of motorsport in and around Silverstone, crowd or no crowd. What an event that was. Welcome to the program.
Nice to join you. Nice to see you all down under. It's been pretty good up here. We've had scorching weather, absolutely phenomenal weather. And, of course, that had a big effect on the Grand Prix, which is kind of what we were looking for in a way. And even though it was only 7 days after the previous one and everybody thought, oh, same old, we actually had a fantastic race. So all told, life's good here. Very good.
Maurice, it was the two Grand Prix. We'll call them both Silverstone. I don't know what to call them, really. The anniversary one is ridiculous. But anyway, the two Grand Prix both were controlled by temperature, really, in that it controlled Mercedes' performance and others, obviously. But they really didn't get a handle on the hot weather with their tyres, did they yet?
No, it had a profound effect on Mercedes. And right now, they will be looking very closely at that because, of course, they've only got a matter of days before they front up in Barcelona for the next Grand Prix, where I'm told the conditions are going to be even hotter, and you've got a similar sort of high-load circuit there. So they've got to get an answer to this. It would seem, from a layman's point of view, from sort of looking at it very broadly, that because they run so much downforce on that Mercedes, because we know that car is really effective, and also because of the problems the previous week, the tire pressures had been put up a little bit. And that combination of factors with the high stress at Silverstone, the high downforce, the higher pressures, just contributed to the Mercedes tires going off, starting to blister, certainly the rears. And with Red Bull, it wasn't. They didn't have that problem at all. And neither, in fact, did Ferrari, even though they are still off the pace. So it is clearly a Mercedes problem. And I hate to say it, but it's nice to see them having a problem of some sort for a change.
Maurice, you touched on Ferrari there. Yes, they're off the pace, but they're not really off the pace with one car. I mean, Leclerc, he actually did very, very well. In time terms, it was a long way behind, but in positional terms, they did very well indeed. The other Ferrari driver, I forget what his name is now because his history. Poor old Sebastian. He is really, really digging deep and struggling, isn't he?
The comparison between the two is stark, isn't it? Because Leclerc, as you say, is doing a phenomenal job. I mean, to get there into fourth place with just one stop. They all thought he was going to stop twice, and he didn't. He looked after those tires, brought the car home. I mean, he is phenomenal. The thing about Leclerc is, give him a sniff, and he's there. He's rather like Max Verstappen. He's so hungry. And that Ferrari isn't really on the pace. But the fact that it has got a downforce problem and a power problem actually played into their hands a little bit under those conditions at Silverstone. And as I say, give Leclerc a sniff, and he's in there, which is terrific to watch. As for Vettel, I don't know what to say. It's just hard to know how you could make a fundamental error like he did on that one by putting a wheel on the curb and giving it a bootful. I mean, it's a schoolboy error, and it's not the first one we've seen from Sebastian. And the guy, every time we see him interviewed, he's clearly not the guy that we've seen, 10 years ago when he was about to carry all before him. He's not at ease with himself. He's not at ease with the car. He's just not a happy bunny. And of course, he knows that they're saying bye-bye, Seb, at the end of the year. And there was never any question about it either. It wasn't a case of, can we have a chat? It's, oh, by the way, you're going. So, the whole combination of stuff is not doing him any good. And now you can see it's just playing on his mind. And I don't know what they're going to do for the rest of this season. I mean, they're going to have to sit down and have a chat with him, but I don't know if they've got time and say, what's wrong? What can we do? I mean, he's just not comfortable with this car. I think the thing about Vettel is that when he's on it, when he is comfortable in the car, and the Red Bull is a case in point, if you remember some of those performances in 2010, 12, 11, 12, 13, phenomenal performances. And I'm thinking of one particular one that always stands out in my mind is when he put it on pole in Singapore, the Red Bull. It was a fantastic lap because he was together with the car. He knew exactly what he was doing. Now he doesn't. He's just a different guy. He's a shadow of his former self. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
It's exacerbated as well, of course, Maurice, by the fact that Charles Leclerc is going so particularly well in exactly the same equipment. The relationship between those two drivers, although it probably doesn't matter because they will be split at the end of the season, is there anything that Charles can actually do to aid Sebastian? And would Sebastian even be open to such a junior trying to contribute to the malaise? Because that's what you feel at the moment. There is a disconnect between not only the driver and the car, but the drivers and the team itself, which is probably alarming for Tifosi, but not out of the ordinary.
I can't see that happening, Darcy, because Leclerc is looking after his own thing. He's building his own name. He is Ferrari's future, and while he probably feels quietly sorry for Sebastian, he's probably happy because, of course, that your biggest rival is your teammate, and he's just hammering him. So that's Sebastian out of the way. I don't think he's going to go out of his way to try and help him. I mean, why should he? And as we saw in Brazil last year, there's not much love lost between them when they're wheel to wheel. So I don't think Sebastian's going to get much help from Charles Leclerc, even if Sebastian would ask, and I doubt he would.
Maurice, looking at that and then looking further ahead, obviously Leclerc ends up with a new teammate next year with Carlos. How do you see that relationship going? Because I've sat on the sidelines, if you like, and watched the Lando Norris Carlos relationship, and it looks really good. So McLaren kind of tick that box. Will that transpire when Carlos moves to Ferrari?
It's a really interesting question, David, because before the start of this curtailed season, for me, if you'd said, right, who's going to come out and top Carlos Sainz or Lando Norris, I would have said, well, Sainz. He's going to really hammer it, because Norris last year, he didn't impress me that much. He was all right. It was his first season. I mean, he'd done really well in the junior formula. And I remember talking to one of the Trevor Carlin, who ran him in some of the junior formula. And Trevor said that he is one of the best young guys I've ever seen. And Trevor's had a few through his hands. And when he turned up, and he went particularly in GP2 or Formula 2, and then in his first season, I thought, don't know. And he was quite immature in some of the ways he handled himself. And I thought, I'm not sure this guy's actually going to make the final cut. But this year, what a different story. I mean, he is on it, and he is really giving it some. And I know Carlos Sainz has had a lot of bad luck. Witness on Sunday, the problem with the hammer on the wheel change. Then he's held in the pits and all things. It's just not going his way. But if you're then transferring it, as you say, David, forward to next year, whereas I would have thought Sainz is going to arrive there and Charles Leclerc, you better watch out. I don't think so. I think that's Charles Leclerc's team now, and Carlos Sainz is going to, good as he is, I think he's going to have. It's going to be a very interesting not confrontation, that's the wrong word, but a very interesting partnership, shall we say, between those two at Ferrari.
Yeah, I guess that's that thing, isn't it? The driver that's already there kind of moulds the team around them. We've seen it with Schumacher, Vettel, it goes on, Nicky, everybody. If you're there first, then you've got a bit of bragging rights and a bit of ownership when the new boy arrives on the block.
How concerned is Carlos going to be about? Sorry, excuse me, Maurice. How concerned is Carlos going to be though about what kind of vehicle he's going to turn up to? What his ride's going to look like? He'd look at Vettel and go, "Deary me," and then look at, actually, hold on. You're doing particularly well on the other side of it, betwixt and between. What's he going to have? What's his equipment going to be like?
Oh, I mean, a good question as well, because if I was Carlos Sainz, I'd be thinking, blimey, what am I letting myself in for? It's lovely to be with Ferrari, and for all the reasons we know, because it's a great, every driver wants to go there. But when you get the chairman, John Elkann, saying, actually, we're not going to be competitive until 2022 because we're stuck with the same engine next year, you're thinking, my God, this is Ferrari. And this is the chairman saying this, which is, of course, not Ferrari at all, because they're always saying, we'll fix it next week, it'll be all right, or we'll fire somebody along the way, whatever. But it's been none of that. And good for Elkann, because this is the fact. So Carlos Sainz must be thinking, my God, what am I doing? And with McLaren as well, on the up, which you'll be, I see you smiling there, Bob, pleased to see. You must be thinking, God, because how many times have we seen this with drivers? Part of the thing is making the right decision at the right time, isn't it? And some of them witnessed Fernando Alonso makes wrong decisions at the wrong time. But if you make the right decision at the right time, it's all part of being champion. And poor old Carlos, I think, must be wondering, is this the right move? Not sure.
Meanwhile, you've got the Aussie going, hey, I'm going to McLaren. This will be good. I'm going at the right time. See you around Renault.
I think here in New Zealand, Maurice, I think we've got the picture boy for wrong decision, wrong time in Chris Amon. But going back to Lando Norris and Sainz, well, not so much Sainz, but Albon, Max Verstappen. Even Hulkenberg, where would Formula One be without them? God, it would be a boring bloody place, wouldn't it? Because they have breathed life into what was wasn't a corpse, but it was it was granny in the cupboard sort of thing. They breathed real life into the whole sport, don't they? Kids like that coming through, and Max and his attitude.
Oh, it's wonderful. I think we've really got a great future ahead of us. With these young guys, exactly as you say, Bob. Max Verstappen is fantastic now, isn't he? He had the rough edges. We saw all that. We knew the speed was there, but the rough edges were pretty rough at times, as Kimi Räikkönen will attest at Spa, if you remember, with the 2 moves under braking and stuff like that. But now he's together, and look, Max took ownership of that race at Silverstone. He, in every respect. And he was just so calm and cool in the way he told the team that famous line about they told him to look after everything. I don't want to drive like a granny. I'm going to go after him, because he could see Lewis's rear tires.
It's funny. We had 2 Grand Prix and all sorts of things happened. The whole bloody world was turned upside down in the second Grand Prix. And what I see headlines around the world is Max Verstappen talking about granny driving. The bugger Hamilton and all the rest of it, it's down to Max talking about his granny. It's amazing, I think.
Yeah, I think it proves, Bob, that newspapers and the media just like lines like that, because it's so much better than the sound bites you normally get about, I want to thank the team, we've got a really good car, everybody's done a great job, it's fantastic, and I drove really well, and I had to do this, and I had a real struggle with my tires. The guy just got out and said it and was very happy. I'm very happy then. It's always good to see a smiling winner, isn't it?
It's better than having Vettel just complain about everything that happens. Yeah. That's his soundbite. That's the go-to.
I think too, Maurice, we've seen a change in the landscape a little bit post-Bernie and to Liberty Media, where a lot of that stuff's sort of freed itself up a little bit, and the drivers are not, to coin a phrase, McLaren speak. They're actually starting to have the personalities that we desire from them, and they're coming out, and you've seen it in the media world.
Yeah, you're so right. I would say, although I'm not at the races so often now, but when I do go, I am immediately aware when you walk into the paddock, and Bob will relate to this, that it's a happier place. Whereas before we had a guy called Pasquale who was in charge of passes, and he was a real horror show. Now everybody's smiling and happy because Liberty Media stroke Formula One want the thing to work. They want everybody to do their bit. And the Netflix series, for example, Bernie would never have allowed that in a million years. It's fantastic. It's going right behind the scenes. I mean, one episode, for example, on Nico Hülkenberg. You think, what? But that was a great story. It was a human story about the Renault story. So, that's key to it all. And everybody's got this sort of spring on their step. And then we've got the young guys coming through who are quite cheeky in a very nice way. And it really does work. So, yeah, they're encouraged. You're right, David. They're encouraged to get on with it, get out there and speak.
Lando Norris, of course, learned pretty much everything he knows when he was driving down here. But I won't mention that. He was in the Toyota Racing Series. I've got to mention that.
Well said.
I think the neat thing, though, is that the flow on from that is that you then have your heroes and villains, as we've always had them, but they become proper people, which sells T-shirts, which draws attention to the sport. It works, and that's not putting Bernie down, because if we hadn't had Bernie, then the sport wouldn't be where it is even to start with. But we're just seeing Formula One take a little bit more control of its own destiny, and they're doing a damn good job of it. They really are.
I agree. I mean, I have to confess, David, that the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you about Formula One and having had 40 years of doing it is largely thanks to Bernie Ecclestone. I mean, I'm the first to say that, because he built a platform on which I was able to work. In other words, he built Formula One up into something that was desirable from a media point of view. By getting television into it, and then the newspapers have to follow television, and that got me in, and we got the stories and all the rest of it. So without him, there's no question that it might have evolved in some other way. But I have to say that I'm here today and having had a wonderful time because of what Bernie did. But towards the end, he really had lost the plot, because he just wasn't interested in moving on. He didn't know anything about social media. He didn't understand it, didn't want to know. Whereas Liberty Media have come in and they're embracing it and they're encouraging it, and that's great. So I think the time Bernie had his time, did an amazing job, and I think actually when the poor man goes, there's going to be some stories coming out of the woodwork about some of the stuff he did, which we might not want to know. But also I think there's some good stuff that's going to come out as well that we don't know about. So a bit of both. But yeah, he had his time to move on, and this is the new era, and it's bloody good actually.
Racing World Podcast are joined by Maurice Hamilton as we look back at a couple of weekends of Formula One action. I'll just take you back to the initial conversation, Maurice, if you don't mind, around the woe-betide Mercedes team and what's happening with them. What did you see in the space of that 1 week regards improvement to what they had to deal with, or indeed steps backwards, and what has to happen in the next week? What do they need to focus on? Because I suppose when you look at such a short amount of time between races, they've got to be extremely precise about what they do and how they adjust. And we know it's a deal of thousands of seconds. So just talk to us about what you think they achieved, what you saw, where they went backwards, and what happens next.
So you're talking about Mercedes? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we saw this weekend at Silverstone was that although Mercedes give the impression that they've got it made, that the car is the best out there, it's the fastest car, easy. They've got the best driver, Lewis Hamilton, and off they go. What you tend to forget is that they're actually on the edge all the time. To get there, they've taken everything to the absolute maximum. It's easy to forget that. It almost looks like it's you get in, start the car, and off you go. But they have thought through everything to the nth degree. And that car is on the limit all the time. And it takes very little to upset the balance. And we saw, as I said earlier, the two things that did that, which was the higher temperatures, the softer tires, the higher pressure, just little things, because we're talking tenths of a second. We just knock them off. So where they go from there, the danger now, if I was Red Bull and the opposition, I'd be rubbing my hands, because when a team is out there winning, what they're doing is they're polishing a very fine act and they're not really making big changes. But when things start to go wrong, You wonder, how do I fix this? And you start to try things, and they might not work, and that's your chance to get in. That's the great thing. So right now, they'll be burning the midnight oil. Anthony Davidson will probably be living in the simulator, having a tea and breakfast in there, because they'll be just working at every single detail to try and find out what it is they can do to run on a similar circuit in Barcelona, a high energy circuit in high temperatures. Are they going to have the same problem? The one redeeming factor they will have next weekend is that the tires are actually going back up the scale, back to the way they were at Silverstone the first time. They're a little bit harder again. So that might help them. But it's by no means a given, you know. It's a very tricky one, that. But then it's a measure of a good team, how they recover. And this is where Mercedes are good. They will be able to recover, probably.
Maurice, the other thing that is come out of the weekend quite heavily, Racing Point have been really competitive all year. And I don't care about whether it's a copy, whether it's whatever, it's another competitive car. But Formula One is sending itself straight down the biggest rabbit hole they've had for a long time, with all this rubbish going on about copying or not copying, and the appeal to the decision about whether their brake ducts are right, wrong, or invented by Racing Point or copied from Mercedes or given to them by Mercedes. I mean, the whole thing is just getting to be a total can of worms in a rabbit hole. It's there's no easy way out of this, is there?
No, there's not, Bob. I'm afraid it's something that has to be gone through, because it's a matter of clarification. And its clarification is necessary because the regulations, the sporting regulations in this instance, are grey. And that's what allowed Racing Point to see the loophole, and fair play to them, they did. And they've done nothing illegal as far as most people are concerned. But there is that grey area, and it needs to be tied down. It's rather like the double diffusers in 2009, you know. There's a little loophole, everybody. And if you haven't got it, you're going to bitch and complain. It's the nature of the beast. That's what happens. There are protests. They have to be gone through to get this matter sorted out. I don't think it's been helped by Lawrence Stroll coming out with big statements about saying, you know, they're saying we cheated. Well, they're not actually saying that. They're questioning what you've done. They're not actually saying you cheated. But he's taken it very personally and come out with these statements, and that's not helping. He's rather like a child stamping his feet because he can't get his own way. I haven't been impressed by him on that at all. But I do take your point about the arguing's not good. But then again, you know, the big gauge, you probably have the same thing. The way you gauge how people feel about it is you go down the pub, which we can do here, sort of, and it's what the guys in the pub are talking about. We're not interested in that. They're not. They're talking about Max Verstappen and his granny, like you said earlier. They're not interested in the fine detail. They go, "What's all that about?" And you start to explain, and you see them glaze over. You know, it'll be resolved, Bob. And we've been here before, haven't we? It'll be resolved. It's a mess, yeah, but don't worry about it.
Okay, I'm not going to worry about it then. I'm hopefully going to enjoy Hulkenberg in there again. As much as sorry as I feel for Perez, who may or may not be in there in a week's time, I don't know, because the Spanish have got a 14-day stand down once you're tested positive. So I don't know how that's going to work out for him. But certainly for Nico Hulkenberg, when he came down here in racing in New Zealand in the A1GP, he was a great driver then. He's been fantastic ever since, and it's just a shame he's not there now driving regularly. But what a performance he had. I mean, it was superb.
Indeed. I mean, the first time I ever saw Nico Hulkenberg was A1GP meeting when he won at Brands Hatch, I think it was. And I went to the press conference and I was mightily impressed by him. And I don't know what age, he was a teenager at that point. But on Sunday, terrific performance. I mean, the guy, you know, he's been dropped in the deep end, no question about it. And you know how it is in Formula One. You're given the seat. There's no excuses brute. This is a good car. It's going to win races. Get in there and drive it. We don't care that you haven't raced for a while. People don't care. They want you to do the job, and he did. He did a phenomenal job. It's just a shame he had that vibration, had to make that last pit stop. But I mean, he showed Lance Stroll up in a way. You would expect Stroll to be closer, if not alongside. But I think Hulkenberg really put his name in the frame for a drive next year. with, I don't know, probably somebody towards the back, but it should get him back in. He's how he's never scored a podium, I don't know. It's one of those things, a bit like you talked about Chris Amon. It's a sort of on that scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maurice, before we have to go, I have to ask the question because it's kind of like a bit of a hero of mine. Your new book on Niki Lauda, just what was he like as a person when you were writing that book and the stories that came out within the book as well?
Niki Lauda was an extraordinary human being. Nobody else like him. And I'm not just talking about a 3-time world champion and all that comes with that, and a guy that won 25, 24 Grand Prix. None of that. Is just what he brought with him, the way he did it, the integrity he had, the wonderful sense of humor, this dry sense of humor. And I talked to over 30 people about him for the book. And I know it was since he'd passed away, and people don't like to speak ill of the dead, but generally you get a feel if somebody's not quite right. There was not a single bad word said about him. Everybody loved him, and they miss him terribly. He was just an extraordinary individual, because not just as I say, the driver, but look what he did with Lauda there and that crash in Thailand. That was the most amazing. I didn't know he'd gone through all that. Luckily, I had a long chat with him in 2011 about it, and he explained it to me, and I was gobsmacked at what he'd done. And it was, for him, it was matter of fact. And I think the bottom line is he was a 3-time world champion. In my book, he was a hero, but he didn't see it that way. And I think that's what made him.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. I was just amazed by some of the remarks that were made by the Mercedes team, you know, when Niki did pass away, and the fact that there was these layers of him that we hadn't always seen. And it's just a testament to the man himself.
He was certainly, Maurice, you know, he drove with us, McLaren, or we drove with him. I can't remember which way around it should be, but yeah, a superb guy all the way through. I mean, didn't matter which team he was with, he was exactly the same the whole time. Yeah. Exactly. There was no difference in him at all.
No, he never changed one bit from start to finish, exactly the same, and would say exactly what he thought. That was the wonderful. From a journalist's point of view, he was mega, because if you needed something, if there was an issue in the like this, for example, we've been talking about this brake duct thing, and you're hearing all these stories, you go to Niki and you say, Niki, what do you think? Very simple. And you go, bang, 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 and you go, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, thanks. And it would be so straightforward. It would just cut through all the crap. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book is fantastic. You've written more books than anybody could possibly read in a lifetime, but the latest one, the biography, Niki Lauda, is just a superb book, Maurice. Well done.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much.
And on that note, we'd like to thank you all very much for staying up to the wee small hours to join us here on the Racing World podcast. Looking forward to chatting with you again sooner rather than later. Maurice Hamilton, thank you very much for your time, your expertise and your passion.
It's my pleasure, guys. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Maurice.
This is the Racing World podcast, and from Maurice Hamilton and Formula One, we might as well trickle down the grades, down the levels, down the categories. Formula 2 and Formula 3 over the weekend. I've got to say, I enjoyed Formula 3 very, very much over the weekend. Plainly, we had a Kiwi doing particularly well, but I thought the racing was immense, especially the second race with the jousting between 1 and 2 toward the end. That was a phenomenal last lap.
What can I say? I agree, totally. Liam Lawson was driving like a champ. Let's go to Formula 2 first of all, because it was not a good weekend for Marcus Armstrong. In fact, it was not a good 2 weekends for Marcus Armstrong. He just didn't get together with Silverstone at all. So we'll gloss over that. But at the moment, Marcus is now 11th in the championship on 34 points. Callum Ilot's 106 leading it. But Marcus's teammate Christian Lundgaard 87 is second in the championship. So, you know, Marcus got a bit to do. We come to Formula 3. It was a pretty good weekend for Liam Lawson, I think. In race 1, the feature race, he was third after starting on the front row. Race 2, he had a wonderful battle again. He was 5th. Now in the championship, he sits 4th on 77 points, which is not bad at all. Sargent, the US driver. It's good to see an American driver getting there on competitive terms, not just sort of being there or whatever. That guy drives really well.
We can asterisk though with Liam Lawson, because he should have had an extra place, but kind of shot off the track. Didn't he?
Yeah, well, he was a little bit edged off the track, shall we say? But that's
But
Formula 3.
the aggression that the guy shows and the lines that he takes, even the opening of that second race and where he chose to sit his car up around the first corner was something else.
We
He
said
shows
that all
huge
along, haven't we?
racecraft. Yeah.
These races are aggressive.
Yeah.
And he's had
No
two
doubt.
good weekends there, hasn't he? He really has. So, Liam, keep it going, mate. Catalunya next weekend for them as well. Super GT was in Japan. Nick Cassidy, they were carrying 42 kilos of ballast in that.
It's fascinating, that category, the way they roll
42
that.
litres. That's like having half of me in there. Half of me. What?
Sorry, what? I
I weigh 90.
Yeah, okay, fine.
More or less half of me. Anyway, he came fourth in that championship. But they're second overall now. But Nick Cassidy is he's got a lot on his plate at the moment, isn't he? He's going to be going Formula E next year and all sorts of things. Very quickly, MotoGP. Shall I do just a quick word on MotoGP now?
Give us a quick word on MotoGP.
Before our break.
Absolutely wonderful weekend. It was the first win for Brad Binder, and it was also the first weekend a win in MotoGP for KTM. Just superb. Once again, Valentino Rossi comes back. He was fifth, and now he's where is he in the championship? He's seventh in the championship. But Rossi, who was going to retire, is still hanging in there. But it was at Brno in Czech Republic, and it was just fantastic. And I'll leave it at that, apart from mentioning I watched Superbikes as well at Portimao Circuit. And Portimao Circuit, when Formula One gets there, watch out. It's going to be fantastic racing.
And rumour has it that he was out on the street watching geckos race up and down as well in his spare time. This is the Racing World podcast. Coming up next, it's Tin Can Turner. We'll send David out with his bit of string and his old Wattie's tomato sauce can, and we'll see what we can get when it comes to IndyCar. We've got a couple of great interviews for you coming up shortly here on Racing World. Perspective Group is a leading media production company based in Auckland, New Zealand. Established in 2009 by former TVNZ producer David Turner, Perspective Group offers you a vast arrangement of media options to fit any size or budget. It covers truly global services supported by some of New Zealand's leading media talents. For more information, contact Perspective Group Limited at perspectivegroupltd@gmail.com and check out the website perspectivegroupltd.com, where you'll find even more information on creating your media solutions.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Welcome back to Racing World. David Turner was sent out, as he does we don't send him out, he does it of his own volition.
Quite
Can't help
voluntarily,
himself.
actually.
Yeah, he loves every second of it. We're going to hear from Ziggy Harkis shortly, but first up, a wee chat with Conor Daly, DT.
Yeah, I caught up with Conor. I had the chance to talk to him, and obviously, Ed Carpenter racing for the Indy 500, but I got Conor to answer a question that we've all been asking, and that's about fans and what the reflection of, Indy will be like this. So this is what he had to say. Well, Conor Daly from Ed Carpenter Racing, thanks so much for joining us on Racing World. Very, very different Indy 500 for you this year without the fans.
Well, when you think about it, we spend like a lot of days at the track, when there's no one there, because we're out there working, we're doing whatever, we're even practicing. There's a few people there, obviously. There's only really one day a year when we have that, the massive crowd. So we so look forward to that. And that is, part of the reason why I love the Indy 500 is the crowd, the people, the sheer magnitude of the event. So, yeah, I mean, it is very sad and it sucks, but it's a terrible situation, all across the board, no matter what. But we're going to do the best with the situation that we've got. We've got some, these teams are still working, hours on end to prepare these cars for the Indianapolis 500, which is our biggest event. It's the biggest event for us at the greatest racetrack in the world, I think. And, we're going to give it our best shot. We've got a great, partner with an NBC to give us a, great TV broadcast. So we just got to make sure that every single person in the entire universe watches the race. And that would be awesome.
Conor, just staying with that theme, do you think it's going to feel a lot different for you guys on race day this year without that massive number of people around?
As funny because like at Texas this year, there was no fans, obviously. And was it weird? Yeah. But I mean, realistically, when you're lining up against all your fellow compadres out there, it's like, all right, well, I still got to beat all those guys, and no matter what, you want to, you want to be the best on that day, no matter if there's a million people there or no people there. So, racing is so competitive. You could be at the rental go-kart track and you still want to beat everyone, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's obviously much larger at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but we're going to get out there and we're going to want to beat each other because they still, as far as I know, do give you a glass of milk and a trophy, and your face gets on that, goes down in history for forever. So that's what we're going for.
It doesn't matter that there's not 350,000 people there. It's the 32 other guys you want to beat. That's what it boils down to, isn't it? I want to kiss the bricks and drink the milk.
I think he summed it up. Races are races, aren't they?
Yeah.
Races are races.
At the risk of ridicule by you, and possibly you, Derek Daly's quite a good friend of mine. We used to race with him years and years and years ago in Formula One when he was with Tyrrell, etc. And, he doesn't speak like Conor at all. He's still very Irish, is Derek. Lovely guy.
So the tin can tribulations continue, this time from Andretti Autosport with Ziggy Harkis.
Yeah, I got the chance to talk to Ziggy, and he's a well-respected man. He's been around the game for a very, very long time. Team manager at Andretti's, just an incredible guy, and very privileged every time I get to talk to him. So Ziggy, I know you guys are going to be watching in the garage at Indy, so we're going to put the Andretti Autosport cap fair square in the middle of the table for you. And this is what Ziggy had to say. Well, joining me now with my famous tin can and piece of string is another great Kiwi that we've always wanted to have on the show. And as we've said, it's all about supporting local. And it doesn't really matter where the local is. It can be on the other side of the world. And that is Paul Ziggy Harkis from Andretti Autosport. Great to have you as part of Racing World. And you're now only a few days away from that first practice for the 104th running of the Indy 500.
Yep, Dave, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's definitely strange times and strange days. And I don't know how I'll feel once I get to the track, but I'm definitely looking forward to get back there again. It's always a great race. TV, it's going to make it, as always, it's just no fans. It's just a whole different world for all of us.
Is the COVID situation made the preparation to this race harder than it would normally be? I know it's always such a big race, but, is there any variable that's come into play as a result of COVID?
Actually, to be honest with you, because everything's been so fluid and so messed up, we sort of had to jump ahead, and we had cars when we were thinking Mid-Ohio was going to happen right before Indianapolis. We built our speedway cars, and we were taking 3 of them with us and leaving 3 of them at home, but we figured that was the only way we were going to be properly ready to, when we come back, we're going to arrive home at about 11 o'clock on Sunday night from Mid-Ohio, and then we had to be down the track the next day and then running on Tuesday. So we had to sort of think forward and make sure that we were ready, and by doing that, we sort of got ahead with the cars, and then when they moved Mid-Ohio, it sort of gave us even more time. So I think our cars are as good as they have been ever. So they look really nice. The guys are doing a great job. Now we just need to go race. Well,
the mystique of the 500 lives on, regardless of the fact that it's now happening in August rather than May, and less a few 100,000 people that are going to be, in the grandstands, but the TV audience globally will be, equal to what it's always been, if not greater. So it doesn't take anything away from the fact that, come 200 laps in a couple of weeks' time, someone will be the winner of the 104th running of the Indy 500, won't they?
Yep, correct. And we've got 6 cars, well, six and a half really when you count Jack Harvey. So with our engineering onto that one, so we've got a whole lot into the field. But as we all know, it's you've got to have everything. Do it all well. You've got to make sure that you're prepared and that you run the race properly, and then at the end of it, you see where you are. But a little bit of luck also helps. So I think, we've got a good shot, but we just, who knows? Looking
at the championship as well, Ziggy, like double points at Indy, and then with maybe some unknowns post-Indy as to whether or not you get to Mid-Ohio or not. The double points can really impact the way this championship's going to play out. Like, I know it's an opposition team and Dixie's got the championship lead at the moment, but that could all be washed away with a DNF at Indy, couldn't it?
That's correct. And we saw how strong the Chevrolets were at last year. Honda did a much better job, I thought, on the fuel. So, Rossi had a good shot at winning. We just got caught out by yellow. It helped the Penske's out. So I think that, double points, it could easily change where the championship is. And, a bad race by Dixon, a good race by Chevy, and those, once again, it's real tight, so who knows. I'm hoping that we have our cars up there. Rossi and all the boys, they're doing a great job. We just haven't really put our act together like we should have this year, to be honest.
And then looking at the championship still as well, it's a question that we've been asked a few times here and I haven't been able to get the answer, and you'll probably know it. Is there a number of races that have to be held by IndyCar to declare it a championship?
I think from day one, once this whole deal started, and I'll give credit to IndyCar, they've had a sort of a plan, and that plan changes every week, and it changes for us. But I think that they've always said that 14 races is the number we want, and so it's important that Mid-Ohio with its double races go ahead. They feel confident that that will happen, so I think the 14 is the number, and I think if we can get to there, that's a proper championship.
Just one thing, looking back at the Indy 500, Ziggy, it's going to be a lot hotter in a couple of weeks' time than what it normally is in May. Does that change a lot of things as to how, not so much team strategy as well and team fitness, but equally how the car runs in that type of temperature?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's this week's actually looking quite nice, to be honest with you, which is unusual. Like 84 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I've been away from New Zealand for too long, but it's sort of quite nice this week. I'm not sure how it'll become race day, but we all saw that like in Texas when it was extremely hot, we had guys going down before the race. I had two guys in medical getting IVs for fluids, and one of them was my outside front tire change, and one of them was a fueler. So it does put stress on both the car mechanics and the whole crew. So it is very important that we're ahead of the game and make sure that we are prepared for anything.
And then for people who don't know that are listening to the podcast, your role at Andretti's is you are the team manager for Andretti Autosport, but then you also do strategy within the race, don't you?
Yeah, I'm not doing as much strategy as I used to do anymore because one of us is getting a little old in the tooth here, so they brought a younger guy in, they're training him, so he's doing a great job with it as well. So Josh Freund, he's the other team manager. And so when young Zach Beach came in, they moved him there, and I'm still on Ryan Hunter race car for the race, along with Ray Gosselin, who's the engineer. So we work together on that and make sure that and he does a great job too. So, it's really good and good teams. I like working with Ryan. He's a good guy. We've got some shoes with Rossi, and you look at our team and we've got some good people there, so we just now need to get one of them up the front for the end.
Well, we won't hold you up any longer. It's important that you get your rest, and we appreciate the time that you've given us on Racing World. We wish you all the very best for the 104th running of the great race. For the first time in 20 years for me, I'll be having to try and watch it on the television in New Zealand, which won't be quite the same as seeing your cheerful face in pit lane, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll always miss you, Dave, and if this Kiwi can't win it for the New Zealanders, we'll give it to Dixon. So.
Well, thanks very much. That's Paul Ziggy Harkis at Andretti Autosport.
And great to have him on, and you've got to love that accent, don't you? That's a fantastic New Zealand-American hybrid. Always makes me smile.
Well, as we've said, it's all about racing local, and he's still a local boy in our hearts. So, Ziggy, that Andretti cap is standing there for you. I know you said that you guys are going to watch it in pit lane. I'm just going to have to top it, though, and say maybe Dixie will be there for you, too. I hope you still return my emails when you get to see this show.
Maybe the last time we have Ziggy Harkis on the program. Really sorry about that, but thanks for your time anyway. Hey, worth a mention to talkmotorsport.co.nz as well. Another platform that you can hear the Racing World podcast on. So we thank that crew very much for getting involved in what we're doing here out in Bob's farm every Tuesday.
Yeah, big thanks to Benjamin and his team down in Christchurch, and thanks for the support. And the show's just hopefully doing what people want it to do.
And on the subject of Christchurch, I better get one in. I'm a Cantab, born and bred. That I've had replaced. For internationals watching this, there's a thing about people from Canterbury. They're called one-eyed Cantabrians because they only see the world out of one eye. We're like that. A mention of Matt Summerfield, the Cantab. Drove really well to win the 20th edition of the Catlins Coast Rally in his Mitsubishi Mirage, the AP4, on Saturday as well. 4 of the 6 special stages. Took the lead after the third. Built a big gap before Andrew Graves won the final stage. Cut the margin back to 38, but well done, Matt Summerfield. Was his sister calling the shots?
No, she was not in the car.
She
this
wasn't in the
weekend,
car.
but his sister is normally in the car with him. He had a friend of his in the car who's one of the sponsors as well that he's rallied with before, but his sister also, he and his sister went through the Elite Academy, so they're both graduates of that, and they're bloody good. The two
I
of them.
feel I need to go through the Elite Academy. I feel like I'm missing out on something.
You have, mate. You've missed out.
Nicole's a great co-driver actually, and testament to the brother-sister relationship as well. So it's good to see.
Right,
Absolutely.
what's happening next week? What are we looking forward to, Bob?
Just a brief, I'm not going to really mention it, but congratulations, Dick Bennett as well, West Surrey Racing in the British Touring Car Championship. They lead everything, won a couple of races at the weekend. They're doing really well. And Dick Bennett, as you know, he's from Dunedin, and he comes back to New Zealand every year. He's a great guy, Dick Bennett. I worked with him years ago. Next weekend, we've got a shed load of stuff going on in New Zealand, but we've also got Formula 1, 2 and 3 and Porsche at Catalunya, probably, unless there's a closed borders thing. Supercars might eventually get going at the first of a double header at Hidden Valley, postponed from last week. 3 races, 38 laps. DTM at Lausitz is going. Formula E and I-Pace, they're racing again. They've been racing there for the best part of 7 months, I think, at the moment. We had, unfortunately, Mitch is out of the championship race now, but Simon in the I-Pace Jaguar had a couple of wins and he's there, so they're racing this week coming and next weekend. NASCAR at Daytona Road Course, Earl Bamber in the Xfinity class. I mean, Earl, just take it away, mate. Show those bloody good old boys just how to handle one of those things when it turns right and left. Wonderful. MotoGP at Red Bull Ring. We've also got the TM Winter Series Round 3 at Taupo Motorsport Park. That's on the 15th. On the 16th, August race meeting, Timaru International Raceway by South Canterbury Car Club. The MCC Autocross 2020, August 16, Nelson Marlborough Car Club. I can't even say it. I'm trying to read too fast.
It's been a long podcast.
Mokomoko Road Gravel Sprint, Hawke's Bay Car Club, Rural Transport, Motorcana at Mid Canterbury, Ashburton Car Club, SSCC, that's the Southland Sports Car Club, Autocross Round 1 on the 16th, and the SSCC Motorcana, same day, Terratonga Southland Sports Club. So there you go. It's a busy old weekend, next weekend, domestically and internationally.
And qualifying for the Indy 500.
And, of course, qualifying for the Indy 500, which comes around every year, any time between January and August, September.
And if you out there are listening, if you're watching and you'd like to ask any questions of the panel, I'll call them that. By all means, please do. It's the best way to go about that, David.
Yeah, you can just go to the Race Control Magazine Facebook page. That gets us directly. And now also the comments that we're seeing off YouTube. And there was a few people that commented last week. And thank you very much for doing that. And hopefully we can continue to make the show work for everyone that's watching or listening.
On behalf, Bob,
thank you.
You just took a great big intake of breath. I thought, what's coming now?
No, I was just going to say thank you very much. Toyota 86 is doing really well on entries for next year, incidentally. That little thing came out today as well. So,
okay.
That's Bob McMurray. It's David Turner. I'm Darcy Waldegrave. Thanks very much for listening to Racing World.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Race Control Magazine is your IndyCar fan mag and so much more. Publishing monthly online on issuu.com, you will find Race Control Magazine there for you to download and enjoy everything IndyCar and so much more. Behind the scenes features, race reports and the entire Road to Indy series are just part of what you will find, along with stunning images captured from the series' leading photographers. Grab your copy today at issw.com to complete your motorsport read. Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine.